Alright, I apologize in advance if I get angry in this video, but I just about hit the boiling point on my disgust about the disparity of treatment in our society against singles. So I talked about in other videos how at the workplace, singles are always used as a sacrificial lamb, right? If we have unusual hours that need to be taken care of at work, you know, if somebody needs to be passed over for a promotion, you know, the single guy, he can survive, right? Obviously, nobody says it out loud, but that's the sentiment. And you can almost taste that sentiment depending on what kind of workplace. Some places, they dress it up very well, right? But other places, not so much. Sometimes if you're very close to some of the decision makers, and you really catch them at a good time, they'll practically confess to having that sentiment, right? Okay. So that's at the workplace. Now I'm back here in Seattle for a few more days, and then I'm looking to move back to Montana. I was looking at a few places. I didn't really like the last place I was at, but I called another place in Missoula, and I'm looking at another place in Kalispell. Now when I called the apartment, it's a month-to-month apartment in Kalispell. We were talking about my situation, my background, and all that. And when the landlord sensed that, I didn't really say I was single, but when it was obviously just me moving in on the lease, she asked if I would bring a girlfriend over. And she then went on to rave about how her previous tenant brought a different girl to the apartment almost every night and caused a lot of noise, a lot of problems, and maybe damaged the apartment. And she went off on a rave about that. And I learned my lesson. I let her rave about that because I wanted her to lose the steam, if you will, so that later on when I negotiated other concessions, they would be a little bit easier to push through. I've learned when somebody's mouth wants to explode, let it explode. Because if they're talking nonsense like that, they run out of steam to talk real sense later on. Okay, so I let her explode about that, but my heart sank. Because when I put it together, see, at the workplace, if you're single, you don't have anybody to take care of, right? You're not expected to go out and meet a dozen girls every week, right? But at the apartment complex, it's the other way around. People expect that you're gonna mingle with dozens of people, bring guests over, and damage the place, right? So my thought was to society, please make up your mind about this, right? What are single guys expected to do, right? One standard at the workplace, one standard at the home. It just made me boil over when I saw that. We get the short end of both of those sticks, right? And then I was talking to a former classmate of mine, and I knew he used to be upset about the same concept, but I didn't realize he was married now. It's been a long time since I talked to him on Facebook. And when I brought up the situation with the landlord and with my boss, he said, well, everybody's single at one point. One day you'll be married, and this will all be in the past, right? Well, that obviously assumes that I actually get married at one point. And the other problem is that I seem to remember he didn't have that kind of sentiment, and I had a feeling we had talked about this in the past. And the nice thing about Facebook is that they keep every message you've ever sent. And I found the discussion we had. I didn't realize it was that long ago, but it was 8 years ago. I was upset at my coworker being able to go away on maternity leave. Not that I'm against it or anything, but I thought to myself, why don't I get some leave so I can go look for my future wife? And I shared that sentiment with my former classmate at the time. I was working at a tech giant at the time, and he suggested if I'm on good terms with either my manager or maybe the HR person, maybe one day when we're half drunk, to just blurt out, you know, hey, how about some leave so I can go look for my future wife, right? He actually suggested that I just laugh it off and see what happens, which might not be a bad suggestion and probably not the best approach, but you gotta understand, I was working at a tech giant. We often had events where people were half drunk, and to blurt it out when you're half drunk might be okay, depending on your relationship with the person involved. But he suggested, when next time you and your boss go out and have 2 beers, to just blurt out, "Hey, I'd like to go to Gdansk to go look for my future wife." He actually suggested that. And now 8 years later, now that he's married and that's no longer on his mind, single lives don't matter anymore, right? It's just really funny. Anyway, my anger with this situation is that there's two sets of standards, right? When you're at the workplace, people don't expect you to want to go out and have a social life, but at the apartment, it's the other way around. And it's kind of like having the society, they want to have their cake and eat it too with the single people, right?